Hi everyone, I'm Kevin Holroyd and this is WildPhoto Academy. Now, as the name suggests, it's all about wildlife photography. And the academy bit, well, in the process, you're also going to learn more about wildlife photography. Now, in this episode, I'm going to take you behind the scenes and I'm going to show you exactly how this photograph was taken, which settings I used, and also how I did the editing. So let's jump straight in. The most successful of the big cats, leopards, are commonly found throughout southern and central Africa. But although they are plentiful, they also pose a conundrum in that because of their shy and elusive nature, they can also be the most difficult to locate. And here is the star of our photo shoot, a stunning young male leopard. And as you can see, he's very relaxed. Let me talk you through my thought process. I'm shooting in aperture priority mode at an aperture of 5.6, but as you can see, it's a fairly overcast morning and I'm slightly worried about the shutter speed. So I'm upping my ISO to 400 just to boost that shutter speed a bit. And by doing that, it's now still giving me a shutter speed of 0.002 of a second, which is way fast enough. He also keeps on moving around, so I've set my focus mode to AI servo on Canons or similarly AFC on Nikons, and by doing this, the camera focus will now help to track that moving subject. Let me quickly jump in here. If all of these technical terms makes your head spin, head over to wildphotoacademy.com where my courses will explain everything to you. So next time you hear terms like aperture and ISO and all of that, you'll know exactly what we mean. And also to say thank you for watching this video. In the description of the video, you will find a coupon and that will give you a 30% off any of the courses. But let's get back to our leopard. He eventually settles down and there he lies on a termite mound and he poses like an Instagram influencer, and now you're going to hear the shutters going. I've selected a central cluster of focus points because we didn't want to get too close to disturb him, so it just gives you that little bit of a safety net you need to ensure you get that focus on the head. Keep going, boy, keep going. Love it. So we followed him for easy another half an hour, by which time, sorry, I had camera fever and I stopped shooting video, so sorry. But what I'm going to show you next is how I edited this photo. Now, editing is a very objective subject. Some people go overboard. You've got your naturalist. I believe I'm somewhere in the middle. I don't believe in changing photos, but I think you can make them better. So the naturalist, please don't lynch me. What I'm going to show you next is my personal interpretation, and hopefully you'll pick up some tips. I'm using Adobe Premiere Elements for this exercise, but you can use any editing software. The basic principles are going to be exactly the same. So let's get started here. Let's go and open our image. That's the one we want. Now this image, straight out of the camera, and it's in RAW format. RAW or JPEG? Well, that's always the question. I always shoot in RAW. I find it's much more flexible. Think of it this way. Think of a RAW image as a freshly painted oil painting of which the paint is still wet. So you can go in and make any amount of changes you want afterwards. Where a JPEG is that same oil painting, but the paint is semi-dried. So it limits you to what you can do in post-editing. When you open your raw image out of your camera, whatever software you use, it will first want you to convert the photograph from RAW, and this but pops up now, and it should be on any software, is your raw converter. Okay, let's put some makeup on this image, and we're going to concentrate here on the main adjustment interface. Now, I had auto white balance selected on the camera itself, and being an overcast day, I don't think the camera got it completely right. So you can see it says at top there, as shot. That means that is directly out of the camera, but I think it's a little bit on the cool side. I want to increase the color temperature slightly, make it slightly warmer. And I'm going to increase that to about 5,300 Kelvin, thereabout. You can see it's already just making it slightly warmer. That should about do it. Next up is exposure, and the good news is we don't actually really have to do anything. If you look at the histogram at the top, you can see how it's centered in the middle. It favors the midtones, and that says to us that the exposure is pretty much spot on. Contrast. Now, I always, as standard, up the contrast just by the slightest little bit. It's something I do as standard. It's almost like me putting sugar in my coffee. I know I shouldn't, but I do it in any case. The next few adjustments, stuff like highlights, shadows, whites and blacks. To be completely honest with you, I very rarely use them. Sometimes use them when I completely messed up the exposure of my photograph and I try to rectify that photograph. That's basically the only time that I use it. Digital sensors tend to undersaturate images a little bit. It therefore needs a little bit of a boost, and that is where vibrance and saturation comes in. And there is a difference, and I explain that in my digital course on wildlife photography. But I tend to only concentrate on vibrance, and in this case we're going to up that vibrance a little bit, but now also it's very easy to overcook it. I want to lift that beautiful golden color on the leopard's head a little bit. So this is the technique I use. I will start sliding the vibrance slider to the right and then keep a close eye on the image to the point where I think it looks good, say somewhere about there. And then I actually increase it more, and you can see it starts looking completely unnatural, and I do the whole process again, back to 0, slide the slider to the right again, and 9 times out of 10, that point where it initially looked good to you is probably where you're going to end up again, and I reckon somewhere round about there. And that is all I'm going to do in the raw converter. Let's press open image, and that opens the main editing software. First thing I want to do is crop the image. So I'm heading over to the cropping tool, and what I've got in mind for this photo is a nice tight crop around the leopard's head. So opening up the cropping tool, and let's drag those borders in a bit. Almost there. There's a little bit of the body there that bothers me, so let's get that out of the frame. There we go, something like that. And you can also see the head of the leopard is right there in the top rule of thirds, the top right, shall I say, rule of thirds position. There we go, I'm happy with that. One thing that's bothering me, you see in the background there, that's that little lighter spot. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but it keeps on drawing my attention. And I want to get rid of it. So I'm going to go to the it's a tongue twister, the stamp clone tool. And I'm going to select a soft brush. You can select your brush size with your slider. You can also use the brackets to make the brush bigger or smaller. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to now take a sample from somewhere in the image, thereabout. I press Alt and click on that spot. It clones it, and I'm just going to patch up that little spot. You see I'm more happy with that now. As I said in the beginning, editing is a very personalized thing. It's your own interpretation. I'm happy with that. I hope you are. Nice color photograph of this male leopard and nicely cropped around the head. All that we need to do now is go and save it and pick your folder and remember to now save it to JPEG. But hang on, there is another twist in this tale. When it comes to any leopard photo, I'm a sucker for a black and white image. Now you can set your camera to black and white and take the photo that way, but here's a tip for you. Trust me, you would have missed that whole sequence of the yawn if you were fiddling around with your camera. So I'd rather do it in editing, and this is how we're going to do it. I'm going to add an adjustment layer, and the one I'm going to pick is saturation, and then I'm going to desaturate the image completely. Let's just collapse that image again or flatten it. But when it comes to black and whites, I love a real contrast kick to the image. And this is, for me, just a little bit vanilla. Well, it's grey, but you understand what I mean. There's just not enough contrast between the background and the leopard itself. Well, back to work then. I'm going to duplicate the layer. Let's just call it background copy. And then I'm going to add an adjustment layer again. And this time, I'm going to use the brightness and contrast adjustment layer. And I'm going to darken the whole image. Now you're probably saying, Kevin, but how does that help? Because now we've just got a darkened image. Well, still got some trickery up the sleeve. Now remember, we've got three levels: the original one, the background copy, and then the adjustment layer, the one that we darkened. What I'm now going to use, I'm going to use the brush tool, and I'm going to concentrate just on the leopard. And by using the brush tool, I'm going to erase down through to the background copy, which was the undarkened one. And if I just concentrate on the leopard's head, it actually lifts or makes it brighter again. And you can actually see where you've used the brush tool. If you look on the right there, you see the darkened area. It shows which areas that you've brushed through back to the background copy again. But you have to be quite precise about it, especially on the finer detail. Let's zoom in a little bit. And then I'm going to take my time and use a smaller brush, and I am going to follow the outline of the leopard. Now I'm not going to bore you or let you sit through the next half an hour while I erase back through to that background copy, so I'm going to speed it up a little bit. But I find it quite therapeutic. It's almost like coloring in. And take your time about it. Be very precise. Even all the way up to the whiskers. And if you're not sure if you've done everything, have a look there on your adjustment layer again. You can see the whole head of the leopard is outlined in black. All that is left now is to flatten the image again and save it. And so we turned a color photograph into a black and white with a nice contrasty kick. Now, editing is very much about experimentation, and it's your own interpretation. But I hope you are also happy with the result. And that's all for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it and that you picked up a few tips along the way as well. If you did, please do the subscribe thing. There will be more to come. Happy shooting.